So Jimmy Carr is somebody that I have actually personally defended before. After earlier this year, he was kind of soft cancelled or very, very highly criticised for his absolutely hilarious Gypsy Holocaust joke. Do you remember that one?
I do, yeah. Just out of context, that sounds quite bad, though.
It was so funny. You know, he's absolutely right. Sometimes we just don't consider the positives of these things. But he has sadly come out and been involved in a show which I find incredibly cringe and which it seems that everybody is, including leftists, and it's kind of destroying a little bit of his credibility to even be involved in something like this. So let's take a look and be very critical. Because the show that he's part of, which is now called, I think it was called Art Attack or Art Shock at first, but was then changed to the much clearer and much more once again, sensationalist, Jimmy Carr Destroys Art, raises some actual interesting philosophical questions. The questions of where does the input from the artist and the actual finished finished product of the art stop? At what point can you separate the art from the artist and their intentions, their personal views? And this is a question that a lot of people have been asking, and a lot of people have been coming to some very short-sighted and simplistic answers in the past 10 years, and it does also relate to cancel culture. This is something that we can explore and determine where we are as a society right now. How tolerant are we towards art produced by people whose views that we find intolerable nowadays? It's the sort of question you see addressed a lot when talking about the works of H.P. Lovecraft, for instance. I'm sure you're familiar. You've probably read Lovecraft, haven't you?
I'm very familiar with his work. I've read some of his short stories, but
well, he's only got short stories,
okay.
So he's not got any massive novels or anything. But for instance, a work like The Shadow over Innsmouth, some people take that to be a secret diatribe against racial mixing, for instance. But I, for one, like to just read it as a creepy cosmic horror story about people mixing with evil alien gods under the ocean, for instance, you know. So you don't have to take it that way, but a lot of people do and criticize it for that. And these concepts that we're discussing could be described as relatively thick concepts. And as you can see, we actually have a freemium gift going out today that will be available for free, that would normally be behind the premium paywall. It'll be free for anybody to go on the website and check out for 1 week, where Carl discusses his concept of thick concepts, where he examines the depth of moral concepts, and concepts like truth and justice, for instance, could be considered quite quite thick concepts. I've not actually watched this myself, but it should be very interesting. So if you're interested in checking that out and seeing the kind of things that we produce for our premium subscribers, you can check that out. And hey, maybe you can feel like subscribing to the website, only £5 a month, to get access to all the other great work that we do. But let's examine this show now that we've gone over all of that. So the initial announcement of this was less than great, I would say. Channel 4 buys painting by Hitler and may let Jimmy Carr destroy it with this deranged-looking photo of
That
Jimmy
is not
Carr.
a flattering photo, is it?
Jimmy Carr, I've heard him described as a man who looks like an android pretending to be a man in the past, which I think is quite accurate. But this is when the circuitry in the android goes haywire and he decides that the only logical course of action is to kill all humans. We're at that point in the sci-fi horror story. In Ex Machina, we're at the end 5 minutes or so. But let's take a look and see what this article's talking about here, because this is the premise of the show. Ian Katz, who is the head of programming at Channel 4, the television channel it's going to be on, well, it has been on, because I think this was a 1-episode special, says the new show celebrates the channel's tradition of iconoclasm and irreverence. Channel 4 has bought a painting by Adolf Hitler and will allow a studio audience to decide whether Jimmy Carr should destroy it. Because once again, allowing these questions to go up to vote always works so well. As part of its latest season of programs, the TV channel has bought artworks by a range of problematic artists, including Pablo Picasso, as well as convicted paedophile Rolf Harris and sexual abuser Eric Gill. Interestingly, this ties into something that I covered, I think at the beginning of last year, well, the end of last year or beginning of this year, where Eric Gill was a paedophile. He sexually abused his daughters and his dog. He was an evil, sick bastard. And he also created the statue that sits atop the main doorway of the BBC headquarters in London. At the beginning of this year or late last year, a man got a ladder, climbed up to it, and started just attacking it with a hammer.
Me and Callum covered it on the podcast when it happened,
and chipping it off. which is one thing. That was kind of an act of personal activism.
I mean,
it
is on the front of the BBC, and it's made by a paedophile, and it's a naked man with a naked child.
It's very sus and very suspicious.
I mean, it's a perfect representation for the BBC, which of course is known for its love of paedophiles.
So you can make an argument there, but this is different. This is a publicly funded broadcaster doing this for laughs, not for activism, because, you know, when there's a chance that Jimmy Carr might flamethrower a painting by Hitler, this is not done in the interest of an in-depth discussion of philosophy of art or anything. This is done for shock value.
Mm-hmm. Jimmy Carr is basically becoming ISIS. He's just destroying history.
Yeah, this isn't an act of protest. This is an act of shock value done by this channel. And like I said, like Josh pointed out, Gill's statue had a bit of a Nazi vibe to it, to put it lightly, whereas Hitler's painting of the outside of a house, it doesn't really have much to do with that whole Holocaust business, does it?
No.
At least not as far as I can tell. I mean, if you can read the Holocaust into it,
it also has historic value. I mean, you don't have to agree with the artist to look at their art and think, okay, that's a piece of art made by a very bad person. It's still interesting. It still has historic value. It
can still speak to the human condition and tell us something outside of it.
I personally would love to see a painting by the mid-century German man. I'm not sure whether we can say his name on YouTube anymore, but
I already have.
Oh, never mind. Well, the seal is broken.
We broke the seal. You know, when you're a few pints down and you just break the Hitler seal. But let's carry on. Ian Katz, Channel 4's Director of Programming, confirmed that the studio audience chose to save the painting by Hitler. If the studio audience chose to save the painting by Hitler, it would not hang in the Channel 4 boardroom, but would be appropriately disposed of. I mean, why would that be a concern of ours anyway? But what if they save it and the head of programming at Channel 4 decides to hang it above his bedroom, above his bed at home, right next to his Hitler altar that he's got in the corner?
I'd be surprised if Ian Katz did that, to be fair.
It would be very surprising, wouldn't it? But what does appropriately disposed of mean? So you don't destroy it on camera, but you're going to shred it behind the scenes. Is that what it says? Or are you going to resell it? Very up in the air. He suggested that if Channel 4 was privatised by the government, then a for-profit owner would be unlikely to take such risks. This kind of programming is difficult and expensive. Probably not a rational commercial approach. Can you imagine a better argument for privatising Channel 4? This was something Channel 4's been under threat of privatisation all year, since the end of last year, I think.
I didn't even realise it was government owned. I always thought it was private.
It was set up in the 1980s by Margaret Thatcher's government as a publicly owned channel, but supposed to be run as if it was for profit.
Ah, yes, that famous free marketeer Margaret Thatcher, just like, yes, I'm going to create more government institutions. That's what we need.
Yes, but as such, Channel 4 has always been known as a channel of quite transgressive programming. It's quite subversive in a lot of cases. There are some very good shows that I've enjoyed through Channel 4, but as well, a lot of the time, a lot of their programming is very purposefully trying to subvert societal standards.
A lot of television is. I don't watch any television these days.
That's probably good. Although, as we've discussed before, House of the Dragon seems to be trying to be subversive. That's very good. It's trying to be subversive, but you're not going to stop me from rooting for the traditionalists in that. High towers all the way. Katz explained the concept of the show. There are advocates for each piece of art. So you've got an advocate for Hitler. Imagine being that guy. There'll be someone arguing not for Hitler, but for the fact that his moral character should not decide whether or not a piece of art exists or not. And I think that's basically where, for me, that's where the philosophical argument ends. I think that you can separate the art from the artist for a large degree, although the artist will have a big contribution to it, being that they are the one that made it. He said that the show celebrates Channel 4's long tradition of iconoclasm and irreverence, and said that saw it once televise an autopsy and give people drugs on live television. As I said, highly subversive stuff, and not the sort of stuff that I would think is appropriate to show on television, given that Channel 4 will probably have been glorifying it.
How do you get to take part in that last one?
Josh is asking for a friend.
Yeah, I know someone who'd be very interested in that.
Yeah, but let's move on because since then there have been other comments on it, like this one. Jimmy Carr destroys art. Holocaust charity slams Channel 4 offering audience chance to destroy Hitler's art. Even before it came out, a lot of people were criticizing this idea. Olivia Marks Waldman, the chief executive of the Holocaust Memorial Day Trust, told Sky News there is nothing entertaining or laughable about Hitler or the murder of 6 million Jews and the persecution of millions more. Once again, going about this the whole wrong way. I don't think they're laughing about the Holocaust. They're laughing about the idea of destroying his artwork. So even the criticism of the show is equally rubbish.
Could you be more stupid than that?
This episode of the television series Art Trouble is making Hitler a topic of light entertainment. This is deeply inappropriate, and at a time of increasing Holocaust distortion, dangerously trivializing. What Holocaust distortion?
This pearl clutching is making me more sympathetic to the show, and I already despise it.
I know, right? I know. It's like two retards fighting. I don't know who to root for because I hate both of them.
Society wins.
Yeah, true. The question of how far art can be linked to its creators is an important one, but this program is simply a stunt for shock value. Cannot excuse the trivialization of the horrors of Nazism. Once again, I don't think it's trivializing anything like that, but I do agree that it's just a complete stunt for shock value.
I imagine they've probably already predetermined which art they're going to destroy. The Hitler one is probably there for publicity, and they're probably going to destroy one of the pedos ones.
I think what they did was the art as well, because they're limited by budget, wasn't even notable art from any of these people. Like, do you know what they got from Picasso?
What was that?
A random vase. Oh no, not the Picasso vase!
I think of all of the people that they're potentially destroying, Picasso surely should be the one that's preserved, right?
Well, don't you understand that Picasso's had some allegations that he wasn't very nice to women recently?
Recently?
Allegations
come back
have been
from
recent.
the dead.
Just to be misogynist. Oh, it brings a tear
Misogynistic
to my eye.
zombie as oh no.
Refuses to eat ladies' brains because they don't have any anyway. In response to the criticism of the show, Channel 4 said in a statement, Jimmy Carr Destroys Art is a thoughtful and nuanced exploration of the limits of free expression in art and whether work by morally despicable artists still deserves to be seen.
Yes, it does.
It speaks to the current debate around cancel culture and is in a long tradition of Channel 4 programming that seeks to engage a broad audience with the biggest and thorniest ethical and cultural questions. BS! You thought it'd be funny, you thought it'd be edgy. Also, the guy who runs Channel 4, Ian Katz, former Guardian journalist, I don't think he has anything nuanced to say about the cancel culture debate. But then it came out, and reviews were less than positive. The review from the Telegraph, a moronic, pathetic waste of our time. Fantastic news.
Tell us how you really feel, Telegraph.
Despite all the build-up, the programme was still shocking, but not for the reasons Channel 4 hoped. Standing in a gaudily lit warehouse, Carr set about pitching pieces of art against each other in a kind of morality death match, which I like that. I like that term, a morality death match. That's a good one.
Is that going to be a new spin-off show at the Lotus Eaters?
Perhaps we should have the morality death match. Instead of debates, that's what we have. We need to reframe your abortion debate with Connor as a morality death match. Whoever loses gets thrown in the meat grinder. Yeah. That'd be badass. Dom Jolie attacked Rolf Harris. Janet Street Porter attacked Sally Mann's pictures of her children. In 1,000 Years, Charlie Brooker and Armando Iannucci, who did Death of Stalin, very good film.
And The Thick of It, yeah.
Yeah. Could have come up with nothing weirder. At the end of each section, the audience voted, and one of the pieces was destroyed. As the losing works were destroyed, while thumping bass played. They just start the rave while you set fire to the Hitler painting. Why not? Interviewees expressed their sadness that the art was being destroyed. You could sense they knew they were uncomfortable, so why do it? The debate about art is almost never about whether it exists, but its context. It was telling that Julian Rubinstein, defending a painting attributed to Hitler, made the closest the programme had to a compelling argument that Hitler himself destroyed art. It's scary to think that the producers was constrained only by budget. If they'd had £1 billion spare, would they have pitched a Caravaggio, who was a murderer, against the, I don't know how to pronounce this guy's name, do you? Guijon?
I'm not sure.
Well, a guy who was a paedophile. It was a moronic, pathetic, depressing little program that ought to embarrass almost everyone involved. It shouldn't be destroyed, but held up as an example that those who don't learn from dreadful TV are doomed to repeat it. I quite like that review.
That's good.
It says it all, really. Even The Guardian, The Independent, didn't have a positive take on it.
They are interchangeable these days.
Yeah, they are, but they said that Jimmy Carr Destroys Art may be the stupidest take on cancel culture yet, and when you think about a show that seems like you're threatening to burn a painting by Hitler, the leftists should be all for this, when even the leftists are like, not sure about that one, bro. It says it all, and even Twitter, were not happy about the show. This was trending yesterday, hashtag Jimmy Carr Destroys Art, so I just took a look through what some of the people were saying about it. I was expecting to find at least one person going, well, nothing of value lost, because that's what leftists tend to do. No, absolutely no one had anything positive to say about this.
I never thought that leftists defending the right of Hitler's paintings to exist would restore a little bit of faith in humanity for me.
I know, we've got...
What is 2022, eh?
You've got your 2022 bingo card out, you've got Kanye coming out as an anti-Semite, you've got leftists defending Hitler's artwork. It's a topsy-turvy world. This person saying 2 pieces of controversial art are shown to an audience for them to decide which to destroy. The failing premise of this Channel 4 shows that there's no room to argue to destroy neither, which is an excellent criticism. Fuels the notion of cancel culture rather than questioning it. Excellent point. The next one, just going like, isn't this actually what the Nazis did though? Isn't destroying art and burning books
that was the first thing that occurred to me?
Yeah, which is a good point. Somebody also just points out that this is very juvenile. Channel 4 deciding to make the show Jimmy Carr Destroys Art. Cowabunga, dude! Totally radical. That's going to get clipped.
To hear that.
That's going to get clipped, isn't it? And the last one. Is, of all people, a he, him, a pronouns in bio, says this is anti-intellectual virtue signalling. When you've got a pronoun person telling you that you're virtue signalling, you might want to reconsider your options. So Channel 4 should absolutely be privatized, and Jimmy Carr should be ashamed for ever taking part in this.
If you appreciated that segment from the podcast of the Lotus Eaters, you can go to lotuseaters.com to get access to all the premium content we have on the site, such as the Comics Corner series, Frank Miller, The Dark Knight Returns, being the first episode. And if you'd like to find out what else Harry's putting out, you can follow him on Getter at Harry Lotus Eater on Getter. Thank you and goodbye.